Hi everybody, this is Lindsay from windingroadcrochet.com, and today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to take a corner to corner crochet graph and write it out as a chart, or simply how to read a corner to corner crochet graph. I've been creating a very easy set of corner to corner crochet charts that can be made into hot pads or washcloths. This is the one I did for February. I'll be doing one for every month this year, and I will leave a link to this chart in the description box below. And now I'm going to show you how to take this chart and to write it out, so it makes it a lot easier to work with when you're crocheting. I do find with a corner to corner chart, because you're working on diagonal, it is much easier just to go ahead and write it out. The other thing I'm going to show you is how to figure out how much yarn to put on your yarn bobbins. These are my printable yarn bobbins that I like to use. They are on my blog. I will put a link to them. I will just wrap my yarn around them after I figure out how much I need. They have a little slit in the top so I can slide the yarn through there, and it keeps everything from becoming unraveled. So I really like to use those. So to do a corner to corner project, the first thing you're going to need is your graph. I like to print mine out on cardstock just because I typically end up throwing it in a bag and carrying it with me a lot. I have my bobbins with me, as I mentioned before. I will go ahead and mark those out. I have the yarn that I'm going to use for this project in case you want to start crocheting as soon as you're done plotting out your graph. I do have all three colors with me right now. I will have my crochet hook so that I can crochet that later. And then the last thing I'm going to want is at least 2 different colors pins. This is optional, but at least for this example, I'm going to use 2 different colors just to make it easier to see kind of what I'm doing. So before we get started, I want to point out something you're going to see in the video. When I made my chart that you see me using in the video, I just took the balloon, the heart balloon, and pulled it on top of my cup of cocoa chart. And when I did so, I did not realize that my heart balloon is a 15 by 15 square and my cup of cocoa is only a 13 by 13 square. So you're gonna see that some of the numbers don't line up. Hopefully you'll just kind of bear with me. I made a mistake, but I am going to correct both the charts. Both of the available charts for you are corrected. I am going to put an additional cup of cocoa chart out so that you do have a version that is a 15 by 15 square. Sorry for the mistake. So when you look at your chart, the first thing you're going to notice is that you have numbers along the side and the top of the chart. These are your row numbers. This is because we are working along at a diagonal. So your first row, the first square, you're going to have a 1 and 1 along the side of it, a 2 and 2 along the side of the second squares, and so on, all the way up. And these are just going to help us keep track of what row we are on. Of course, you can see the colors we are using here. Now, if you don't want to use these colors, that's completely okay. When you write out your pattern, you can just change the name of the color that you are using down below. Now, to make this pattern easier, it's going to be nicer for us to go ahead and abbreviate our colors. So I am going to use B for blue, and sorry, my handwriting's not the best. I'm going to use an O for orange, a W for the white, and then an R for the red. But of course, if you wanted to do a pink balloon, you could just put that in as pink and know that you're going to be writing the red as pink. And then the next thing we want to indicate is just which way we are moving up and down each row. So for the odd rows, I'm going to move up. And then for the even rows, I'm going to move down. And I typically like to go ahead and write this along the side of my pattern so that I can remember that as I'm writing out the pattern. So for my odd rows, I'm going to be moving up. Just going to pull this down so I can write. My odd rows, I'm going to be moving up. So just draw an arrow kind of diagonal up into that direction. And then I'm going to change over to pink, and I'm going to write all my even rows with a pink. And I'm going to be moving downward and to the left when I am doing the pink rows. So that just kind of helps keep me really nice and straight when I'm writing out this pattern. So now we're going to go ahead and start plotting out our rows, and it doesn't really matter which pin you use for this part. You could use 1 pin for the whole process. I'm just going to use 2 to try to keep this a little bit cleaner looking and a better example. So I am just going to write out my first 10 rows. And we can plot out those first 10 rows. So now I'm looking at my row 1 and moving upward. I just mark that first row, and that first row is blue. So on my row 1, I'm just going to put a B. And I'm going to grab my pink pin, and I'm going to move down and count how many blue rows I have. So 1, 2 blue rows. And then on the row 2 section, I'm just going to put 2B, standing for 2 blue squares that we are going to work. So then we'll just move on to the next row, and we'll have 1 blue in the first section for row 3. We're going to move up to the right, so 1 blue, and then 1 orange. Put an O, and then I like to separate everything with commas, and then 1 blue again, and that is row 3. So blue, orange, blue. Back to the pink, working down and to the left. Going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 blue. So we'll have 4 blue for that row. 4B. Go back to the odd. 1, 2 blue. 1 orange. So comma O, comma, and then 2 more blue. And one thing you will notice as we're doing this, as you're increasing the number, if I count up, say my 2 blue, my 1 orange, my 2 blue, and row 5, it should equal 5. And then row 6 is going to equal row 6, is going to equal 6 total, I guess, numbers or squares that we're working, and it's going to continue working that way as you increase. It'll just simply change as we start decreasing. So in row 6, I counted down and I have 6 blue, so a 6B. Now moving up into row 7, we're going to do 1 blue, 1, 2, 3 orange, and then 1, 2, 3 blue. So you see 1 blue, 3 orange, 3 blue adds up to 7, which makes sense because it's in the 7th row. It's just a nice way of figuring out if you notice a row's coming out wrong, maybe where you've written the pattern wrong is where you could figure out if something's not adding up right. So now we have 6 blue on row 8, 1 orange, and then 1 blue. And then you just keep doing this all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and speed up my video a little bit to show you as we move along, but things are going to change when we get to row 15 because at row 15 we're going to start decreasing. So as I go ahead and start plotting out the rest of the rows, I'd like to know, would you like to see me do, say, a time lapse of me crocheting this particular pattern? Would that be useful for you? If I did a full tutorial showing the entire pattern, it is about 29 rows. It would be a very long tutorial, but I didn't know if just simply seeing someone do it at a slightly faster pace would be useful at all. Let me know in the comments below. You can see that I went ahead and wrote out the rest of, or the next 10 of my pattern, and I just continue working from row to row, working up and diagonal on the odd sides, and then on the even numbers, I'm just working down at a diagonal from the right to the left, working down. And I actually was very happy with changing the colors of the pins on my rows. It just helped me kind of keep track of where I was. So here I'm on row 15, and I'm going to go ahead and count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops. Didn't mean to switch colors, but hey, things happen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red, so I'm using an R now for the red, and then 3 blue. And just at this moment, it's really good to mark on your graph that you are now decreasing. So I typically will do this by writing the word decrease after the row that is my last increase, and then I will go ahead and make a line in between the rows where I change from increasing to decreasing. If I'm making a rectangle, I will write on the side, stop increasing on one side. And then from here, I'm just going to go ahead and write out the rest of the pattern. And it's just that simple, just plotting it out. And to be honest, I have my pattern that is the woodland winter wonderland, all the little cute creatures. They are 32 by 32 squares, and I think it maybe took me just about half an hour to plot that out, so it really doesn't take that long. But a lot of times if you're looking at a pattern and you really don't want to plot it out, most designers will offer just a paid version for an inexpensive fee where you can just buy it already done for you. So that's something to keep an eye out for if you don't want to plot it out yourself. Also, let me know in the comments below, do you like when I speed up a video like this, or would you rather have a longer video that shows everything done at a slower pace? I just have a tendency of liking to speed up things that I find rather repetitive. So I definitely like to know your opinion in the comments below on how you'd like me to handle my videos. So as we actually reach row 25, it is the last row, and from that row on, we are just doing blue. So we have 5 blue in this row, and then just to finish off, I'm just going to put 4 blue, 3 blue, 2 blue, and then B for 1 blue, because that's actually how the pattern works. We just know that it's going to be blue for the rest of the way. We use 1 less blue every row because we're decreasing by 1 when we decrease. So now that our chart is plotted out, let's start thinking about our bobbins. We are not going to want to carry the blue yarn under all of that red. It's going to show. So we're going to carry 2 blue bobbins. One bobbin is going to go under this orange and along this side of our heart. And then we're going to carry another bobbin along the other side of that balloon tail and along the other side of the heart. So we will have 2 bobbins with the blue, and that will prevent us from having to carry that yarn under the red. We're going to have 1 bobbin that is red. I'm not even going to bother with a white bobbin just because it's 2 squares. I can pull that from the skein here. And then for the red, I'm going to carry the red under the white because it's next to another red square. You're not going to see that yarn. And then of course we'll have a little bobbin for our orange here as well. So for every bobbin, we want to make sure we put the right amount of yarn on the bobbin, and the way I've kind of figured this is for every square on the chart, we are going to do 1 foot and 1/4 of a foot for every square. I used to do 1 foot, add a few extra feet at the end for extra room, and I always seem to be 1 square short. So I've moved that up to 1 1/4 foot for every square on my chart. So to measure out the yarn for our bobbin, I'm just taking a measuring tape that I have a tendency of keeping on me. I actually have a lot of them. These are things I lose often. So I keep a whole bunch on me, and I'm going to measure it out to 15 inches because that is 1 foot and 1/4. And then I'm just going to take my orange yarn and start measuring the 15 inches and counting out to the number that we need. So I have 11 squares for the orange yarn. So I'm just going to measure out those 15 inches 11 times. It's good to unwind your yarn as you do this and not be dealing with knots, but this is some leftover yarn from actually my fish bag that I made for my son in the summer. So it's kind of been a little depleted and isn't in the best shape, so it's nice that I'll be able to use that up. So here is my 11 measurement points for my squares. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. And now I have my yarn for that orange. And these, just so you know, are the medium-sized bobbins. I have 3 different sizes, and I would say my medium is my favorite for small projects like this. I do have a larger size. It seems really large, but it holds a lot of yarn, so it's great for larger projects. So you'll just slip the yarn through that hole, or use the slit that's cut in the top to put the yarn in, start wrapping it around. And then when you are done, you just slip that through that slit there once, twice, and that will hold everything in place, and there is your bobbin. So then I will go ahead and do that for the other colors before I go ahead and start working on this project. I'd make a bobbin for the red. I'm not going to do one for the white, and I would do 2 bobbins, one for each side of the blue. And just to mark it out a little bit clearer of how many I'm needing for the blue, I would just count through my first few rows. So I'd start with one color here for the first row, the second row, and then that third row, so that starting bobbin is going to go along the left side. So I'm just going to go ahead and map that out with my pin. And for all these patterns that I'm putting out, these kind of hot pad washcloth patterns, I'm going to do this for you and give you suggestions on each of those patterns for this entire year, because I do want you to get a good idea of what's going on and have a good sense of what we need, of where you're going to be using your bobbins. So then now I'm looking down at row 24. Row 24 comes through the last of this red. So this side would be the same bobbin we're working on. And so this very last bobbin, the bobbin on the left, is actually going to include the last 5 rows here. So that's the whole section that I would need to count up for the blue bobbin on the left side, and then I just count up the blue bobbin on the right side. And I would make those bobbins and then be ready to go ahead and start my project. I hope you liked today's tutorial. If you did, make sure you subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified of other tutorials that I put out, as well as like this video. Comment in the section below and tell me if you like how I speed up the areas that are repetitive, or if you'd rather those remain slower so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. And I hope you will check out my other corner to corner crochet tutorials, as well as my pattern tutorials. I'll also leave links in the description box below of all the things I've talked about here, including where to find these printable bobbins.